The Communist Takeover of America, 45 declared goals. These 45 declared goals are listed in a 1963 congressional report. Information is posted below. The 45 declared goals are as follows. Number 1, U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war. Number 2, U.S. willingness to capitulate in preference to engaging in atomic war. Number 3, develop the illusion that total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. Number 4, permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Number 5, extension of long-term loans to Russia and Soviet satellites. Number 6, provide American aid to all nations regardless of communist domination. Number 7, grant recognition of Red China, admission of Red China to the UN. Number 8, set up East and West Germany as separate states in spite of Khrushchev's promise in 1955 to settle the German question by free elections under supervision of the UN. Number 9, prolong the conferences to ban atomic tests because the United States has agreed to suspend tests as long as negotiations are in progress. Number 10, allow all Soviet satellites individual representation in the UN. Number 11, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one-world government with its own independent armed forces. Some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow. Sometimes these two centers compete with each other as they are now doing in the Congo. Number 12, resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. 13, do away with all loyalty oaths. 14, continue giving Russia access to the U.S. Patent Office. 15, capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Number 16, use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions by claiming their activities violate civil rights. 17, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. 18, gain control of all student newspapers. 19, use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. 20, infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making decisions. 21, gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. 22, continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to, quote, eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms, unquote. 23, control art critics and directors of art museums. Quote, our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art, unquote. 24, eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. 25, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. 27. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. 28. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. 29. Discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. 30. Discredit the American Founding Fathers. Present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. 31. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. 32. Support any socialist movement to give centralized control over any part of the culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, mental health clinics, etc. 33. Eliminate all laws or procedures which interfere with the operation of the communist apparatus. 34. Eliminate the House Committee on Un-American Activities. 35. Discredit and eventually dismantle the FBI. 36. Infiltrate and gain control of more unions. 37. Infiltrate and gain control of big business. 38. Transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. 39. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. 40. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. 41. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents. Attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents. 42. Create the impression that violence and insurrection are legitimate aspects of the American tradition, that students and special interest groups should rise up and use united force to solve economic, political, or social problems. 43. Overthrow all colonial governments before native populations are ready for self-government. 44. Internationalize the Panama Canal. 45. Repeal the Connolly Reservation so the United States cannot prevent the World Court from seizing jurisdiction over domestic problems, give the World Court jurisdiction over nations and individuals alike.
The president spent a lot of time on using the S word, socialism and socialist. It was a not too subtle, I don't know whether it's a dig or a enhancement. I'll let you decide.
I was flattered.
Okay, fair enough. You have said you are a democratic socialist. Can you be a democratic socialist and a capitalist?
Well, I think it depends on your interpretation. So there are some democratic socialists that would say absolutely not. There are other people that are democratic socialists that would say, I think it's possible.
What are you?
I think it's possible. I think.
Do you say to yourself, I'm a capitalist, but?
I don't say that.
Okay.
You know, if anything, I would say I believe in a democratic economy, but.
Gotcha.
But the but is there.
Okay.
So in some ways, whether it's you're coming from, say, Elizabeth Warren's perspective, where she says, you know, she says things like, I'm a capitalist, but we need to have hard rules for the game.
What does the private sector do better than that the private sector, look, government should stay out of X because the private sector does that better?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of consumer goods where the private sector works. And by the way, I think it's important to delineate that just because you're in the private sector doesn't, you can be in the private sector and be a democratically socialist business. Worker cooperatives are a perfect example of that. It's not about government takeover. It's about how much do workers have a say in your business? Do you have workers on the board? Do workers enjoy a decent amount of the wealth that they are creating? Or is the majority of these profits going to shareholders while you're paying a worker $15 an hour to live in a New York City apartment? And so that, to me, is the difference. It's not that the public sector is democratically socialist and the private sector is not. It's really about a more nuanced understanding of how our economy should work.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.
One of the top Democrats in the House of Representatives, in fact, the man who many thought was going to succeed Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House should Democrats win in the fall, lost his primary last night. He is Congressman Joe Crowley. He was widely expected to be House Speaker next year if Democrats retook the House, as we said. Instead, he's on his way out. He was toppled by a 28-year-old self-identified socialist called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. During the primary, Ocasio-Cortez attacked Crowley for his race, saying that as a white man, he was not fit to represent the district. She explicitly said the election was, quote, about race. Can you say things like that now? Apparently you can, and win. Charlie Hurt is opinion editor at the Washington Times, and he joins us. Charlie, I didn't grow up in a... Look, there have always been bigots in the country, for sure. Right. But you
Usually
didn't
Democrats.
see people running for office saying, don't vote for the other guy because of his skin color. When did that become allowed? And why did nobody say anything about it?
No, it's absolutely staggering, and you're right. It is something that you would never hear anybody in decent company say. But increasingly, it's been something that that is accepted coming from the left. And ever since the beginning of the whole Tea Party movement, we've been sort of waiting for a similar reckoning to hit the Democratic Party. And I think that's what we're seeing now. And all along, the question has been, how bad would it be? And when you look at some of these candidates that Republicans put up, the Tea Party candidates, they weren't the best candidates. They were a little rough around the edges. But at the end of the day, they were constitutionalists like Mike Lee, maybe annoying, but they loved the country. These people are communists. And that's a real problem. And Democrats are going to have to contend with this. And this is not going to be the last sitting Democrat who is going to get ousted by some socialist who wants free stuff for everybody that comes out of nowhere.
This candidate in Queens ran explicitly against ICE and called for a South Africa-style Truth and Reconciliation Commission to go through the sins of ICE, its human rights abuses. Are you going to see other Democrats run on that platform?
Oh, I think absolutely, and I think that you will even see, and this is the coddling that we saw from we've seen from the Democratic leadership going on years now. We're going to start seeing actual mainstream Democrats in Congress pushing this lie about ICE. And my goodness, what do you expect when they talk about things when they accuse ICE agents and Border Patrol agents of being like Nazis? I mean, my goodness, what do you expect is going to happen with some of your candidates?
I mean, look, I don't want to make, I know that Politico just 2 days ago said that Crowley was a shoo-in, it was an automatic win. I mean, people didn't see this coming, even the so-called experts. So I don't want to pretend that I know where the electorate is on everything. But it doesn't seem to me that if you ran in a general election on abolishing a law enforcement agency that protects our borders, you could win. Could you win on that?
No, and I think that, who knows, New York 14, maybe this sort of candidate can win there, but I can guarantee you anywhere else across the country, you're not going to be able to win on this, and all of this plays right into the hands of Donald Trump. I would argue that Donald Trump got himself reelected this week, and it's because of crazy stuff like this, and the Maxine Waters stuff, and the haranguing people in public. It's all playing into Trump's hands.
It sure seems that way.
In case you missed it, the spectre of racism has returned to politics, and it is really effective. Donald Trump says he hasn't got a racist bone in his body, but unfortunately, he does have a racist rant on his Twitter feed. Telling 4 non-white congresswomen to go back to where they came from is pretty much a home run on the racism front. So does this prove definitively that Trump is a racist? Well, you know, I'm not here to judge, but if I was his lawyer, I would tell him to settle out of court, as usual. The US House of Representatives held a vote and decided that Trump's comments definitely were racist. 4 Republicans backed that resolution against their own president, which may seem significant until you remember that the other 187 Republicans didn't give a shit. Why? Well, because a little sprinkling of racism is bloody effective. Not least because while everybody has been debating racism for the last week, it's pretty much been forgotten that this all started over criticism that immigration centers on the southern border aren't exactly providing a nightly turn-down service or fresh linen for their unfortunate guests. Okay, you need to be ready for an uncomfortable truth. This is going to hurt. Pretty much as soon as Trump dropped that go-home bomb, his approval ratings went up. Racism is equal opportunity though, so the squad, as these 4 congresswomen have become known, took it as an opportunity to get in the spotlight and hit back. And that is exactly what Trump wanted, because he thinks that voters will see this and will want to vote for the white guy, or orange guy. Don't believe me? Listen to this. And now that Trump's rejected the traditional dog whistle approach and taken out the megaphone instead, the Dems will have little option but to call anyone who votes for him a racist. After that, it's going to be pretty hard to win their votes. In the next year and a half, Americans are going to be told that they've got 2 choices for who gets into the White House: racists or America-hating socialists. I wonder who they'll choose.
Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our featured speaker tonight, although he needs no introduction. Please welcome our governor, and if I had it my way, the president of these here United States, George C. Wallace. You have to take care of that. Well, then, the governor has just informed me that he would like to have a picture taken with these 2 young individuals. So, Jeff, Nathan, come on up here. Nathan, you hard of hearing? Come on up. We ain't got all night.
I'm sorry. I can't.
What do you mean you can't? Huh? You shy or something?
I can't.
Well, of course you can. The governor ain't gonna bite. You just stand up, walk up to the governor, take a picture with him.
He said I couldn't go to Alabama. Not me or anybody like me. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. So I can't. Sir.
Dandy, you get your Negro up there right now.
I'll stand behind the wishes of my player.
You sure about that? Take the picture.
Get on. Come on. Okay, second stop. The market. We are the market.
We need to open our eyes. There's over 2 million illegal immigrants bedding down in this state tonight. This state spent $3 billion last year on services for those people who had no right to be here in the first place. $3 billion. $400 million just to lock up a bunch of illegal immigrant criminals who only got into this country because the fucking INS decided it's not worth the effort to screen for convicted felons. Who gives a shit? Our government doesn't give a shit. Our border policy is a joke. So is anybody surprised that south of the border they're laughing at us? Laughing at our laws? Yeah. Every night, thousands of these parasites stream across the border like some fucking piñata exploded. Don't laugh. There's nothing funny going on here. This is about your life and mine. It's about decent, hardworking Americans falling through the cracks and getting the shaft because their government cares more about the constitutional rights of a bunch of people who aren't even citizens of this country. On the Statue of Liberty, it says, give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. Well, it's Americans who are tired and hungry and poor. And I say until you take care of that, close the fucking book. Because we're losing. We're losing our right to pursue our destiny. We're losing our freedom so that a bunch of fucking foreigners can come in here and exploit our country. And this isn't something that's going on far away. This isn't something that's happening places we can't do anything about it. It's happening right here, right in our neighborhood, right in that building behind you. Archie Miller ran that grocery store since we were kids here. Dave worked there, Mike worked there. He went under, and now some fucking Korean owns it who fired these guys and is making a killing because he hired 40 fucking border jumpers. I see this shit going on, and I don't see anybody doing anything about it, and it fucking pisses me off. So look around you. This isn't our fucking neighborhood, it's a battlefield. We're on a battlefield tonight. Make a decision. Are we gonna stand on the sidelines, quietly standing there while our country gets raped? Are we gonna ante up and do something about it? Yeah! You're goddamn right.
It was Nelson Mandela who said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." The point being that any feeling, including hate, no matter how intense or illogical it may seem, is like energy. It can't be created nor destroyed. Rather, it can only be transformed from one form to another.
I hate anyone that isn't white Protestant.
Why?
They're a burden to the advancement of the white race.
American History X dives deep into hate from a unique perspective. We experience the story from the point of view of a once devoted and idealistic neo-Nazi skinhead who desperately tries to put the past behind him to protect his brother from following in his footsteps.
I don't want you getting in trouble in school.
It's a story founded on the belief that human nature is inherently good and asks, where does hate come from? The first time we ever see Derek on screen, we see the skinhead filled with hate towards anyone who doesn't share the color of his skin or his beliefs. At this point, we could never imagine that this man's life was ever any different. But soon we find out things weren't always this way for him. So where did it all begin? The film makes us believe for most of it that it all started with the death of Derek's father, who was murdered by a group of ethnic minorities.
Because my father was murdered doing his job, putting out a fire in a fucking nigger neighborhood he shouldn't have even given a shit about.
Young and confused, he sets out to find an answer to why his father was taken from him. He thinks he finds it when he and Cameron Alexander form a white supremacist gang, which causes Derek to descend into a world of social hatred, blaming the minorities of society for everything that's wrong in his country.
Because their government cares more about the constitutional rights of a bunch of people who aren't even citizens of this country.
But we soon realize that the hatred seed was planted much sooner, during a simple dinner conversation between Derek and his dad about black literature.
Huh? I mean, you gotta trade in great books for black books?
Does that make sense? Huh?
This scene mirrors the other dinner scene that happens chronologically later in the story, which shows how Derek's values are completely transformed.
This notion that we have some obligation to help this struggling black man, you know, cut him some slack until he can overcome these historical injustices. It's crap. This stuff you guys are saying just perpetuates, turning and looking the other way while our country rots from the inside out.
The movie jumps back and forth between past and present, and there is a very clear distinction between the two. The past is shot in black and white to represent how Derek and the people around him look at the world, as simple as black versus white. The present, however, is shot in color, distinguishing itself from Derek's past simplistic outlook on the world.
I don't feel funny, Cam.
What he doesn't realize at first is that his actions don't just influence him, but the people around him, people he loves. This lifestyle eventually sends him to jail for killing 2 gang members that try to steal his car.
My father gave me that truck, you motherfucker! You ever shoot at firemen?
Derek's reaction to this scene shows us how deep his hatred goes and how intense and misplaced his beliefs are. 2 very important things happen to Derek in prison. Number 1, he's raped by the men he thought were his brothers. And 2, he reluctantly befriends a black inmate. These 2 things, and a visit from his former teacher, who also happens to be black, caused Derek to lose all faith in his cause.
I don't want to fuck up my family anymore.
A new man, he sets out to try and change the things he did, including that his brother doesn't follow in his footsteps. In the end, he knows the rupture of his family is his fault, and he has to fix that by becoming a better person. His arc is a moral journey into redemption. He's punished because of his actions and is forced to learn the lessons on how to be better. But this realization comes too late, as his brother Danny is killed by a young black kid for virtually no reason whatsoever. This kid was probably just as confused as Danny throughout the movie, as we constantly see him hanging out with thugs. It is likely they put him up to it as some kind of test. Immediately after Danny's blood splashes on his face, his eyes open wide, and we know he regrets it. If you think the story sets out to present white people as being victimized by black people, then you missed the point entirely. So much about American History X seems to be that hate, in all of its forms, leads to no resolution. It doesn't tell us who's right and who's wrong, because no one is. It's only because of hate that we are distanced from the ones we love. Feelings are energy, and they can't be created nor destroyed. They can only be transformed from one form into another. Racism becomes equality. Violence can become peace, and hate transforms into love.